Hey there, folks. It's Jay Frost speaking to you, of course, from Command Central at the Philanthropy Mastermind series. Really happy to welcome you back. And we have a great and very seasonally appropriate session today. So it's going to be a lot of fun to discuss this. And I hope you'll be a part of this discussion. We have a person here today who I'll be introducing to you in a moment who has a lot to share with you. But you have your own experiences, and I know we benefit from hearing them. So there's at least two ways you can be a part of this discussion since we can't see or hear you. You just saw those in the preceding slide, but I'm going to repeat them in case you're just joining us now. One is the chat, and it would be wonderful if you go ahead and warm up that space for our guest and let him know that you're here. Just say howdy or hello or whatever you want to say, and maybe where you're from, which part of the country, the world, which organization you're with, whatever you'd like to say. And Jen, thank you for getting that started. And you can do that to the hosts and panelists as Jen has done, or you can do it to the whole group. And the chat is both a place from which we will draw your comments and questions, but also a great place to play. So feel free to make those public or to everyone, as Amber has just done. Thank you, Amber, from Kids Food Basket in Grand Rapids. Boy, have we spent a lot of time there, right, Jack? So do feel free to join them there in the chat and say hello. Hello, Jean. And all the other folks there. And feel free also to use the Q&A throughout. We'd love that. It's a great way to draw those questions, and you can even post them anonymously if you prefer. So those are your places again, to play, but also to share, and from which we'll draw your comments, questions. I also want to encourage you to take a look for this content and that of the rest of the Philanthropy Mastermind series over on the DonorSearch site. DonorSearch is the sponsor of this series. They have been generously since 2016. This is episode something like 615. I have to do a recount soon, but you'll find much of the content from the last 2 years at the DonorSearch site at donorsearch.net under the resources tab or on their YouTube channel. And an email will come to you afterwards with a link to the recording. But don't go away because you want to participate in this today. In addition to that, if you want to know more about your donors, I hope you'll check out what DonorSearch has to offer along those lines. We're going to be talking a lot about your donors today, but this won't be talking about DonorSearch unless our guest chooses to mention them for some reason. So to learn more about the company, a wonderful company, but also about your donors, you'll have to check that out while you're there at donorsearch.net. Now, with that, I want to introduce to you our guest, Roy Jones, college professor, fundraiser, gala closer, major gift trainer. He's raised over $250 million plus, that's a low figure, in a career that's included serving as VP of USA Direct, Chief Development Officer at Liberty University, Senior Development Advisor at Russ Reed, Vice President Mercy Ships, et cetera, and now he is, of course, the founder, but also the CEO of Fit Fundraising. You can see the logo in the back there in a second. He'll probably tell you a little bit more about the firm, and we'll make sure you know where to reach out to him at the conclusion of the conversation today, which is about unwrapping year-end fundraising success and staying engaged and grateful during the holidays, which is, of course, the big giving season for most of us. And in fact, maybe just to start things over in the chat, let us know whether or not you have a seasonal plan or a plan of what you're going to be doing over the next, whatever it is, 6 weeks, because this is the big season for most of us to engage with our donors. And I'll start right there. Roy, thank you so much for hanging out today and talking about this really important seasonal topic.
Jay, it's an honor. Just appreciate it so much. Appreciate the fine work that DonorSearch does. And of course, I've been a user for a number of years. I use it for all kinds of things. It's really interesting. Last night, year-end fundraising event in Tyler, Texas. And it was they were surprised. I wealth research every participant, every attendee at an event, so that when I get ready to do the close, I know what giving level people are in the room at. So there's so many things that you can use it for. It's especially this time of year, focusing on people that have capacity is just critical. And while the average donor, some people call it market level donor, other people call it regular donor, but people that give under $1,000, you're usually trying to get them to give 2 or 3 times a year. Usually one of those gifts, happens at year end. And your bigger donors, your $1,000 plus givers, um, many times the only gift they make is at year end. And so it begins with Giving Tuesday. We're approaching that right now. It is critical. It really is the kickstart to year end giving. I remind people all the time, and I say this over and over again. I've been waiting for people to prove me wrong, but it hadn't happened yet. But what most people see is that uh, half of all their giving happens in fourth quarter. Half of that happens in the month of December. Half of that happens the last week of December. Half of that happens the last day of December. December is just mission critical to meeting your financial goals for the year. I've seen so many development professionals kind of go into a holding pattern once Thanksgiving sets in and they move into the holiday time. Well, people won't meet with me, so I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 or 3 weeks PTO here through the holiday, and we'll get things kick-started again in January. That is the worst thing to do, and I've seen so many people make that mistake.
Yeah, it's funny because back in the real old days, you had to have people in the staff not only to do all these things you're discussing and we'll be sharing now, but also they had to receive checks. And now that checks are less and less of a function of what's this receipting, I wonder if maybe people are thinking, wow, it's the end of the year. I'd really like to take some time. But as you said, it's about the engagement with people when they're in the mood to give. And this is true of all communities, right? I mean, let me form that as a question. So why is it that December is so important?
Of course, the tax code is the critical reason. And most of the people that give, it is about stewardship. And so they want their money, whether it's $100, $1,000, or $10,000, they want it earning. They want to make as much money on it in wherever, whatever financial instrument it's parked in. They want to earn as much as they can before year end. So that pushes, especially the bigger gifts, more and more and more towards the very end of the year. And I've worked for organizations. They've come in. We're changing all that. We're going to make June our. Don't follow that folly. Year-end giving is year-end giving, and it is going to stay the way it is. Now, we're sitting in a unique position right now. What you tend to see with bigger gifts, especially major gifts, 5-figure gifts, they tend to grow, to perform better, and you'll see more of them when the stock market is up. And we're in a very unique position as we approach Giving Tuesday now, where the stock market is trending up, cryptocurrencies off the chart, and again, those types of things, you really got to be getting ready, getting people to think about making a gift of stock is just really critical as you're in fourth quarter, and being ready to receive those and process those, and having people in the office available by email and phone to walk people through that process, how to make that happen. It's
So
just
important,
critical.
right? Yeah.
You got to be there.
Well, people don't necessarily know how to make those gifts. So first of all, they have to be reminded that they can, that it's probably easy if they have stock or crypto, that it's probably better for them financially to make a gift of that asset because it's appreciated. And we may not be thinking about it. They may not be thinking about it unless we remind them. And then secondly, they don't necessarily know how to do it. And then third, is this still true that when people make a gift, let's say a gift of stock, that we may have difficulty knowing where it came from unless we're communicating with our donors pretty closely?
It depends. And again, whether you see it a lot with donor advised fund giving now, where it comes in anonymous and it's almost impossible to figure out where it's coming from. But usually with a gift of stock, cryptocurrency, appreciated asset like that, you're going to have to know where it's coming from.
Well, at least the broker, yeah.
At least the broker knows.
That's right.
And again, it is you're doing the best you can to make it easy for them.
Right.
And what we have to remember, and we so often forget this, the average donor in America gives to 7.2 charities. So guess what? If your process is difficult for them, they can't reach anybody, they can't get questions answered, people aren't returning their email, text, or phone call. Um, guess what? Um, you'll go from being number one on their list to number four, number five, or worse yet, number eight, and you're off their giving list altogether. And I've seen it happen just because you weren't available, you weren't accessible, and you didn't make it easy for them. So we got to remember we're one of many charities people give to at year end, and being accessible is just mission critical.
That's really an important message to hear. I have a feeling it falls under this category of best practices. So I want to ask you about that. And before I do, I want to just touch on one thing, which is there's been a discussion, and it's been a discussion with Merit about where we spend our time over the last couple of years, especially whether we want to put that much emphasis on cultivating donors and sending out thank you notes and handwritten notes, and whether we want to be available by phone. And in fact, a lot of charities don't even list a phone number on their website. But you've just given some reasons why that might be important to be able to be reachable by email, phone, and text, because people like to communicate how they want to communicate. And so as we jump into this, it'll be really useful, I think, to hear your thoughts on why it's not bending over backwards for donors. It's really bending over backwards for our mission, to make it possible for people to give in the way that makes sense for them and to communicate with us the way it makes sense that they communicate with them. But maybe that's all under the category of best practices. So can you kind of take us through, in your experience, some best practices for the season that, and then people can match up and see if they're doing some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, I often get compared to the Grinch because I never approve PTO during the holiday season. I just don't do it. And as a matter of fact, now I'll go the other way. I'll give extra PTO days. I'll give extra time off if they take that time off in July, or early August, or late June. Times in the development philanthropy schedule where it's traditionally pretty slow. We want people to focus on those times because we got to get them ready for the things we have to do in November and December. The first thing is, and you touched on it, receiving, thanking people quickly, and again, not just with an AI autoresponder text message, but thanking people and taking the time to write them, taking the time to again, you do use the autoresponder, you do send the automatic thank you, but taking the time to send them a letter, taking the time to communicate with them and to say thank you. The sooner you do that, the more likely it is you get a second gift. I never ask for a second gift when I do a thank you letter, although it's implied because I will include a reply envelope. And again, when you track second gifts, it's pretty amazing that within 2 weeks, that donor's gone online to make a gift, or believe it or not, send an old-fashioned check into the office, a second gift, because you thank them quickly. I've tracked it, and I've tracked it over and over again. I've tracked it for more than a decade, and it's absolutely true. The quicker you thank somebody, the more likely it is they send a second gift. If you thank somebody within 72 hours, and I've tracked it, I've measured it this year, you're going to see as many as 1 in 5, 20% will send a second gift. It usually won't be as big as the first gift, but it will be a second gift, and that's money that can pay for your entire receipting acknowledgement program. I mean, it is free money just by doing the right thing and doing great stewardship.
So Roy, with that, is that also true for digital? I mean, not the AI, fake receipt kind of thing, but it's legally real, but it's not really warm and fuzzy. But if an organization does send a personalized acknowledgement, and it's via email, is there usually something the equivalent of like the donation button or the receipt, the additional envelope, and does that work in the same way?
It does. It absolutely does. And again, it's there is that autoresponder, and they know it's an autoresponder, but I go to the trouble to send a second email. I go to the trouble of sending a written letter. Somebody in for all of our clients, we recommend thanking every gift at least 3 times. The autoresponder, an email, and a printed letter. There's just something about it when you could, first of all, one half of all your direct mail gifts, people usually go online to make that gift. You say, well, then it's not a direct mail gift. Oh, yes, it is. I mean, it is soft attribution. I call it peanut butter math. We're kind of spreading it out, but we're looking at what prompted that gift. And you need to thank people in multiple channels so that they give in multiple channels. When a person starts to give in multiple channels, you will increase their lifetime giving to your organization by 100%. It's absolutely documented fact. If you have people that give, that respond to mail, that come to an event, that respond online, you're going to be your best donors. They're multi-channel givers, and it's these multis that you're looking for, and that doesn't happen by accident. It needs to happen by design at the acknowledgement process. Thanking them in multiple channels is how you get them to give in multiple channels.
We did have a note in the chat from Marianne who talked about how their busy season is in the summer. So there are some organizations where that may be true. And so thank you, Marianne, for that. I'm wondering if an organization finds that it has a lot of activity, maybe there's special events, or a good example of this, as well as digital campaigns or physical mail campaigns, if that should in any way impact what they design for the year end. In other words, does it necessarily mean that they should lessen their activity at year end just because a busy season might occur in the spring or the summer?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. You meet donors where they're at, especially in the academic world when we did our annual fund effort for alumni. I mean, that always happened in the fall, and it was usually September, October, not November, December. But we knew that the big gifts came at year end. And so again, what you have to do, it's a little different for your overall file. You may have some peak times at other times throughout the year, but with especially when you move from 4-figure donations to 5-figure donations and 6-figure donations, you have got to focus on those people as you move into fourth quarter and do all you can to begin touching them so you're top of mind, so that you are number 1 of 7 or one of when I was at Mercy Ships as vice president of development there, we had a little more money to spend towards the end of my tenure there. We actually did a survey of our donors and paid an outside research firm to actually interview 2,000 of our donors because we wanted it to be scientifically correct.
Yeah.
And found out that our average donor gave to like 11.3 different charities. So it was much higher than the national average. But it's all that to say, the bigger the gift, the more you have to focus on them at year end. Now I also say you have to focus on them earlier in the year as far as engaging with them so they can identify the project for that year-end gift that they're going to make. The bigger the gift, the more contact it takes and the multiple contacts it takes, but you've got to be in front of them at year-end. At year-end, I tell people, get on the phone and then get on the road. My wife and I have had a tradition and we've been doing it for 20 years. We usually take 2 weeks in the middle of December, and guess what we do? We deliver Christmas cookies. I mean, we are, and whether I have an appointment or not, they know I'm coming. And we usually will try to create and have a project earlier in the fall where whatever organization I'm working for will will have a Christmas gift of some kind. There's nothing wrong with store-bought gifts, but boy, if you can have a handmade craft from people in your program, it goes a long way at Christmas time. And again, what I'll try and set up as many meetings as I can, but I'll let them know, hey, I've got another meeting in your area. I've got a Christmas gift I want to drop off. And I literally will knock on the door. Sometimes they'll invite me in. I never go. So no, I've got other meetings, but here is a gift we put together for you. And thank you so much for what you do for us. And it's that kind of high touch. And again, I can't say it's 100% match ratio, especially where I don't have an appointment. But we book appointments, we create a hub, and then we fill in around it. And I mean, within a day, I can do 10 to 20 cookie drops, just depending on how concentrated the donor level is. But focusing on on those big donors, you say, did that really impact giving? Oh, you bet it does. Before I get home, usually the check has showed up online. It's beat the gift beat me home. And this kind of attention, it's top of mind. There is competition. When you look at the number of appeals that are being done out there, the average nonprofit does 18 appeals a year. I mean, that's average. Some are doing an appeal every week. Some are only doing an appeal 2 or 3 times a year. I don't know how they make it, but there's a lot of competition out there, and so what you're trying to do is be top of mind, and using the holidays and using this period between Giving Tuesday with both Thanksgiving and Christmas to get in front of donors and to touch them and to say thank you. And again, the fun thing about it, it's not a really heavy ask, but the people that you show attention to are the ones that come back and make the biggest gifts at your end.
I definitely want to touch on that in a couple ways because you've talked about something so highly personalized. So maybe I should start with who's making all these cookies and what kind are they? Because clearly it's working.
Oh, my wife is the master of that. She loves to bake. Now again, I'm not opposed to store-bought cookies. Now and we've done that before. Now we'll usually repackage them in our own gift bag or gift tin. But people appreciate the thought.
Yeah.
And they appreciate the fact that you thought of them, and they know that, especially if you're with an organization with thousands of donors, they know that you can't do that for everyone.
That's important. And that goes back to the comment you made very early on about having some information on your donors so you can think about where you want to invest that time. That we love all the donors, but we can't do the same things for everybody. And in fact, Lacey in the chat had talked about this earlier, so I think you've addressed it about how important are year-end gifts to top donors, giving a small plant, food, et cetera, to say, we're thinking of you and grateful to you. You've just been highlighting that. But then someone else asked, and this is an important question, I've gotten this my whole career, from Marty, who is saying, do you get pushback from donors when spending money on gifts as a nonprofit or charity? So whether we're talking about a very professional brochure or store-bought cookies or something in a nice bag, do you find that that's an issue, especially for top donors to provide a gift?
It can be. Now you have to be careful. There's a flip that is there's a switch that is flipped, and I see it to start to happen about at the $1,000 level, where they're no longer donors, they're investors, and they don't want you wasting money on 4-color printing and big slick brochures and all this kind of stuff. And that's why I liked it. Cost us more money to do. That's why I liked, if I buy something store-bought, I put it in my own gift bag. Again, I'm not a big, I would rather go buy a Hallmark card and sign it myself than mass producing the properly branded nonprofit logoed gift. Now I'll drop my business card in, but I want it to look like I really did this, because in most cases I did. And again, I that's why the other reason why I love, again, it's not expensive. I've done things like going to Hobby Lobby and buying photo frames and mats. You can get them for $1 a piece and have our clients do handwritten thank you notes or Christmas cards, handmade Christmas card. Part of the program, we're teaching donors, we're teaching our clients stewardship. We're teaching our clients to set how to say thank you, how to write an old-fashioned thank you letter. Literally, I get on the mark board and help them. So here's how I would say it, and they'll copy it down, write it out on a piece of stationery that I pre-cut to fit into that Hobby Lobby mat. And for $2, I got a Christmas gift that I'm telling you, I've seen it. I go into people's homes, and those gifts I gave from years ago, something that was handmade like this and framed and matted. I mean, it's on the wall. If their home catches on fire, that thing's coming out with them. That's how touching it is to them. And
So,
again,
just to make
cost me
it
$2.
just to make it crystal clear, why do you think that's so important to them?
It's just there's just something about a gift like this that is um, I don't know what the right word is, tactile. You know, this they touch it, that they know that a client touched that together, people were appreciative of the investment they made, and
Right.
it's just precious to them. And again, it's not how it's, you hear it all the time. It's not how much the gift costs. The cheaper you can make it, the better it is. But it's the thought that counts. I mean, wow, we took the time, and I'm not opposed to mailing gifts to donors, but my preference is always, 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 always using drop bys, leaving a gift. I don't go in, but I would say it's tough to estimate. It depends. You have good weeks and bad, but I would say with at least 50% of these gifts, we with these Christmas gifts, we lifted the year-end giving amount, and
Right.
and I would say 1 out of 4 were people that could be a lapsed donor. They could be $100 donor that are giving $100 because that's what we asked for. But we do our wealth research. We identify, wow, that is a low giving donor with huge capacity. Let's treat them like they're huge capacity. Let's give them a gift. Let's say thank you. And guess what? They'll add a 0 to their gift.
So Roy, let me ask you about that, because you said you don't object to mailing. It's better to do it in person. For people at national charities, whether they're small, and by the way, I'm definitely going to get to Randy's point and question about this in a second. But for whether organizations are small or they're large, they may have donors and supporters across the country or even around the world. What is a good way to have those touch points? What's the best practice for people far away who are still close to your heart?
Yeah, again, a holiday card, you can't go wrong.
Right.
And again, the more personalized you can make it, the better. Don't just pre-print them in block letters. Take the time. Um, buy those stack of cards, but take the time to circulate it and have with different ink pens and have different people in the organization sign it and say thank you. Let them know, they know by looking at that whether it's pre-printed or whether it's a real signature. And taking the time to do that kind of thing just goes so far, and it means so much.
Is that an opportunity for board members as well as staff to do things like sign those cards and do?
Absolutely. And, setting up, hey, letting people know, hey, we're, you know, uh, come to the front desk. There's a box of cards there. If you'll just stop by during your lunch break one day and sign as many of those things as you can, our deadline is the 3rd of December. We're going to try and get all these out. So please stop by before then and sign some cards.
And what's maybe one of the most creative kind of things that you've seen as a gift, as a token at year end?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I know exactly what it is, but one of the things I would do when I was at Mercy ships, and of course, they had hospital ships primarily on the west coast of Africa, and so when I would bring donors to the ship early in the year, I would find a local artisan to make things from that country. And I got into carved animals, and it's from Africa. A little wooden. Got some in the other room. I don't have one here, but again, they knew that it was made in Africa, by somebody with a connection to our ministry, and I think I paid $1 a piece for them. Didn't cost us much at all. But I mean, I did that, a couple years in a row, and by the third year, people were calling me at the end of the year, wanting to know when they could set up the meeting for me to drop by.
Wow.
Now we
Yeah,
did a different
that says a
animal
lot.
each year, but that was
That says a
probably the most memorable. But again, it is, you just won't believe that people keep these gifts, that it's so special to them. These high net worth people, they all say, "Oh, I don't want to be thanked." They all say, "I don't want you to do anything special for me." Let me tell you something. They all lie.
Well, maybe they're lying to themselves too. I
They're
mean,
lying
some
to
people are
themselves if
humble.
nothing else, because
Yeah,
they do want to be thanked. They
sure.
do want to be affirmed. They do want to be appreciated. And the thing about using December to do this, again, the bigger the organization, the more they realize we can't do that for everybody. And I'll tell them that. I will absolutely tell them that. And to let them know that my wife and I are reaching out. We set a goal, uh, uh, to get a gift out to our 100 top supporters, and you're one of them, Mrs. Smith. Thank you so much for what you do. It just means so much to us.
So Randy, excuse me, I have a comment from
Looking
Randy.
at
Roy,
Randy's note.
Randy had written earlier, what would you say are the most essential end of year action items for newer nonprofits just starting their charitable giving program?
Pick up the telephone. Again, a voicemail, and again, especially a voicemail where you, first of all, you say their name. You let them know this is not a call center, that who you are and why you're calling. I wish I could call everybody. I can't. I'm trying to call our 100 top supporters this year, and you're one of them. I won't keep you on the phone long. Give me a call back. But please give me a call back. Again, thank you for all you do for us. It's that kind of thing. Pick up the phone. Again, I say pick up the phone. Texting. Texting is so important today. That's been hard for me. Now I have three sons, that are in their 40s, some of them, and so, but even my boys, I can't just call them. I got to text them first, and it drives me crazy. But guess what? When people start texting you back, you're family. You're in. And so integrating the communication, call them, leave a voicemail, text them, use an email, and use handwritten notes. I still to this day, and I know, you know, some of these young 20 somethings, just how archaic is this, that this guy actually uses an ink pen and writes out handwritten thank you notes. But it goes so far. And integration is the key. It's just like with our direct response programs. If you want people to contact you back, you want people to engage with you, you've got to engage with them in multiple channels. And so pick up the phone, leave a voicemail, leave a text, send an email, and people will call you back. But you got to do it. And again, it's heavy lifting. This is the blocking and tackling of fund development. There's no shortcuts to this, but this is how you add a zero to that gift at the end of the year.
So that's one of the key ones is that stewardship piece. Real gratitude demonstrated over multiple platforms. That's clear. Are there other things that people have as kind of an action item list for year-end fundraising, especially in smaller or newer organizations?
Yeah, I mean, you got to realize the rhythm, and it changes between Giving Tuesday and December 31st.
In what way?
Frequency to begin with, and so there's kind of the pre-Giving Tuesday announcements that are happening right now, early in November, all the way up to Giving Tuesday. making sure that again, and I would use text, and I would use phone, and I would use email. But you're going to touch every donor on your file 2 or 3 times on Giving Tuesday, because if you're not doing it, the other charities they support are. And so the only way you can cut through that clutter, the only way you can get to the front of that list is by joining the crowd. But that's where it starts. And then again, it's acknowledging early in December. That's when the Christmas cards should go out. Don't wait till the week before Christmas. It really should happen earlier in December. Some people, and of course, this window's already closed this year, but some people will focus on Thanksgiving cards instead of Christmas cards. But that sort of acknowledgement is just so important. And then it is, the other thing, and I wish it weren't true, but it is absolutely a fact in our environment today. Most people do 2 appeals in the month of December. They'll do a main appeal early in the month that's in home by the middle of the month. And then they're going to, especially to their top donors, and they may send this first class. They may, most certainly, then they're overlaying it with email. But then something that's in home the Monday after Christmas. And realizing, again, half of all gifts happen fourth quarter, half of those happen in the month of December, half of those happen the last week of December. And so they will have kind of a last chance to help us this year appeal that's in home the first business day after Christmas.
I know we had a comment from Becca before. I just want to touch on it, saying we'd love to take our donors to Haiti to meet our staff there, but to see the impact the donations have, but it isn't safe to do so right now. I think many people will be aware that the situation in Haiti is very, very challenging right now. But we want a deeper connection. How can we facilitate this real experiential connection? A virtual tour, maybe have some former staff from Haiti who live here, meet donors for a coffee or dinner event. What are your thoughts about ways to make sure that the experience and the impact is also clear, especially when people are thinking about how they want to make those year-end gifts? Are there some ways, for example, like Becca's talking about, utilizing video, or better utilizing our program staff to make those connections more real?
Yeah, I think you have to do all the above. But specifically as it relates to year end, again, um, uh, finding something that's made in Haiti, uh, creating gift cards. Of course, this would start earlier in the year, that are made in Haiti. Involving people in your program in that process, and boxing them up, bringing them here, and mailing them. So I think those kinds of things are really important. The other thing, and again, we may not be able to bring people to Haiti right now, but finding people, and there are, whether it is bringing someone that's part of the program there here to the States for a period of time, to speak, share stories, I think is very, very relevant. And again, video makes the world go round. Having people with real-time video content. Again, you have to be careful because you can make it too slick, and you don't want to do that. I think, video that looks like it's been recorded on somebody's iPhone can be very powerful and be used both in text, in email campaigns, to really move the needle forward.
Is that true for both solicitation, or I should say solicitation, cultivation, but also in acknowledgments? Because I can imagine CEOs getting on there and it looking slick, but also it looking real from the field. Like, here I am, and
it's got to look real. Yeah. And again, I used to, and I learned this. A mentor of mine, Vernon Brewer, has an organization, World Help. He called them stand-ups. And everywhere he went, it didn't matter what he was doing that day, he was given every morning a list of about at least 10 donors. And he would stop throughout the day, whatever work they were doing, whatever country he was in, and he would literally record on his iPhone a thank you with the activity going on around him. And he modeled that for the whole organization, modeled it for me. And again, that kind of video communication that's one-on-one. He's calling the donor out by name in the video with the work going on around them. Impactful.
Yeah.
I am sure that there are donors that have a message from Vernon on their phone, and they've had it on their phone for a decade because it was so impactful and meant so much to them, and they've showed it to hundreds of friends over the years. So the more personalized you make the video, as opposed to it looking like a Hollywood produced video, the more impactful it is.
We're talking a lot about giving during this season, and we're not talking about it in terms of any particular religious affiliation. I'm wondering about what kind of sensitivities we have to that. If our organization, for example, isn't expressly faith-based or from one faith tradition, are we kind of making sure we're not addressing that? Are we? How do we ensure that we are being true to whatever it is that the organization is all about, but also being sensitive to the fact that our donors may come from many different places and traditions?
Sure. And Jay, you said it right. You just have to be true to yourself. And every organization has a certain culture, mindset. Again, in some cases, it's absolutely appropriate to use the word Christmas. In other cases, it's probably better to say holiday. So again, I don't think, and I think you get a lot, since we're using theological terms. I think you get a lot of grace from people. The holiday times, uh, you know, to me, the holidays are about Jesus, but somebody else, it may not be. But culturally, we share in this country a special time of year where we think about each other and we think about others more than ourselves. And again, it really, we've it used to be that Thanksgiving was kind of where it got kicked off, and I still think it is for the most part. And Giving Tuesday's been laid in, but again, in most people's minds, again, I think you get a lot of grace during the holiday season, and and I don't think people are as offended about that kind of thing as sometimes we think they are.
Yeah.
Um,
I know that you mentioned earlier tax deductibility, and we had a question that came in from I'm trying to remember who it came from now, about what gifts are tax deductible. And I know this isn't an illegal or an accounting seminar, but I think it's probably good to mention maybe how you address tax deductibility in letters now that so many of the letters are, like you said, physical letters, digital receipts, they're sometimes handwritten notes. What language is important to include, and when does that start? Is it for every gift, regardless of its size? Do they have that language? Is it in every single form of acknowledgement? How do you handle that?
yeah, it is. You get very complicated, but it doesn't have to be. And so these letting folks know that it's a tax deductible gift is important. Um, and again, that there would be unique situations, events, auctions where where it does get a little more complicated, where there's a gift that was provided. You have a golf tournament. They can't write off the green fee, so you got to deduct that from the amount of their gift. So there's those kinds of unique things, but for the most part, it's thanking them for their gift. And uh, Enclosed is uh, listed below is the amount of your tax deductible gift, and that's as detailed as you need to get. And you know and the truth is, for most people that don't give over $12,000 a year anyway, they get the standard deduction. It's not as relevant today as it was 5 years ago. Um, and it is, more about saying thank you than it is about giving them an instrument to use with their April 15th filing.
Right.
So,
Now, and I have another technical question on the receipting piece, which is more about the acknowledgement than anything else, and not the legal part. You talked about how ideally you want to get that acknowledgement, I mean a real acknowledgement, out within 72 hours. I love that idea, especially since many of us now don't even receive those physical letters anymore. And I'd love to know in the chat now, this is a personal question for everybody. If you are receiving physical letters or thank yous when you give gifts, especially if they're year-end gifts, because I keep track of this every year and some other folks do in the sector. And what we're seeing is that there's been a decreasing volume of organizations that are doing what you just described as best practice. And I know it works. I know it feels good to me. But I wanted to ask you about the 72 hours in relation to year end. So let's say we make a gift on, there people are lazy like me and they're doing their thing and on December 31st and they're doing it by credit card on some website. Should the acknowledgement say, thank you for your gift on December 31st? Or can an organization do as some have done with me, where they say, we received your gift on, and it's like January 2nd or something. Now I can't even apply it in my mind the way I did in the previous year. What is your advice on making sure that the acknowledgement is reflective of when people gave and not when the organization's administrative functions operate?
Right. Yeah. And of course, the speed to do that thank you makes it a lot easier. And of course, in the old days, we had a postmark we could look at so that we could actually document when we received it. Now, again, a digital gift, not only do you know the day that it came in, you know the hour and the second it came in. So it's it is in some cases much more accurate. So so all that matters. But thanking people in a timely manner, has less to do of when they are what year they get to take the deduction. Um, it is just more about acknowledgement and stewardship and feeling appreciated. Again, the number of gifts are going down. And we just have to be aware of that. Well, I believe, and I think there's probably dozens of reasons for that. But one of the key reasons the number of gifts is going down is because we're not acknowledging them properly and frequently as we should. And so it is this self-fulfilling prophecy that we lead ourselves into. But again, what's happening, and again, it's once again why it's so relevant. Try and get in front of your biggest donors at year end. Um, and this is it really has been a huge shift. In the old days being even just 5 years ago, um, 60-70% of people's income came from direct response, email, mail, social media, digital giving, but it was direct response. Um, and it was, significant and measurable, and only, 25-30% of their giving came from major gifts. We would kind of, to illustrate that, it was the donor pyramid, right? Well, what's happened today? It's no longer a donor pyramid. It's a donor square. And so there's fewer and fewer gifts. So the amount of smaller gifts are going down and the number of bigger gifts are going up. And so this donor pyramid has become a donor square. And so you have to, in order to generate the same amount of money, because there's fewer gifts at the base of the pyramid, because the pyramid doesn't exist anymore. You've got to get more bigger gifts. And so that's why you've got to layer on um, these major donor touch points. Major gifts, they happen through an email? Yes, and they do. Can they happen from a direct mail appeal? Yes, and they do. But where do most major gifts happen? It's relationally. The biggest gifts you will ever get is with people you're meeting with face to face. And so in essence, it's kind of weird. The technology has changed so much and advanced so much, but it's now come full circle. The biggest gifts are coming from people that you talk to, that you engage with, that you meet with, that and it's not always in people's homes. Most of the time, those meetings are in coffee shops and restaurants in a neutral location. But those face-to-face engagements, and they really can be sparked at year end, are becoming more and more and more relevant today. If you think you can rely on technology and digital engagements to fund your organization, it's going to be tough.
In fact, I wanted to ask you about that. We've talked a lot about the personal, and social media is an example of how people engage with everybody all the time over multiple platforms. But I think many of us have talked about this kind of rise of loneliness despite the profusion of social media. But what is a best practice in this era, at this time, for year-end engagement and solicitation on social? And then maybe you can touch on events, because you already talked about greens fees, and where I live, there's no way you're having a golf outing in December, but in other parts of the country, maybe there is some kind of event. So what role does social, which is offline, it's online entirely, versus offline, like a special event, what role do they have in best practice for year-end fundraising?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I find, and there are people that I'm sure disagree with me, but social media is still PR, not DR. It's still public relations. It's not direct response. It builds brand. It helps your direct response efforts. Can it generate revenue? To some degree. It primarily generates engagements, and then it's how you follow up with those engagements. You capture email addresses and how you cultivate. So it serves a role. But a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll just forget all this donor contact stuff and just set up um, you know, a, a crowdfunding page or a social media page, and people will just send me money. It doesn't work that way.
But it sounded like you did imply that you can set up vehicles to, for example, capture email addresses and then use that in your email campaigns. Is that
That's
right?
right.
So,
That's right. It's a 1-2 punch. It doesn't stand on its own.
okay.
And so it's really not a revenue generator. It's a lead generator. And it but it can help. Where it mainly helps you is with an existing campaign that's going on with people you already have a relationship with.
Mhm.
And again, there is this thing of multi-channel engagement. So you've written them, you've emailed them, you've called them, you invited them to an event. Oh, they see it on social media, and so it ties it all together. But it really doesn't. And again, maybe there'll be a time when that is changed. But right now,
Not now.
it's it,
What about the physical events? Do they have a role for organizations depending on
oh,
where they are and what they do at year end?
absolutely, and especially with bigger gifts. You heard me say it earlier. These bigger donors, they really aren't donors anymore. They are investors, and they need to interact with you. The best investors, the people that make 5-figure, 6-figure, and 7-figure gifts, they're looking for events to participate in. They want to meet the board. They want to meet people face to face. They want to see how they feel about them. They want to see their integrity and their impact report, and they want to do it in person. It's like a stockholders meeting. They're investors, and
Right.
so these events are where again, they're not that critical for small donors, but it's the big donors that really insist upon it.
There is so much in all this, and I wonder if someone came to you and then you only had the proverbial elevator, it's in this case not a pitch, but the elevator advice window, where you're going up just a few floors, and they said, I don't know, I'm so overwhelmed. We only have, let's say, 10 people in my organization to do fundraising. For some, it's only one.
Right. For most, it's only one.
What are the three things I need to do to ensure that between, the end of Giving Tuesday, which is one wonderful nightmare to have, and then the rest of the season when we really have to do all the things you've been talking about, if they could only focus on three elements, what would they be?
Identify your 100 biggest donors. Identify your 100 wealthiest donors, and that can be two totally different groups of people, and focus there. Now, again, there will be some that, okay, they're giving at their capacity, they've got wealth, and they're making 5-figure, 6-figure gifts. But what you're trying to do is focus on the right people. You only have so much time. Time is the only asset we really have. And so as a fundraiser, you have to focus where the money is. It's that simple. And you've got to wade into that file from who can help me the most to who can help me the least. And that's how you have to manage your time, especially as you move into year end.
And by the way, we did have a response from Randy and Daniel who talked about that this is a topic for a follow-up program. You bet we will be covering this. How do you go from collecting emails and screening smaller donor files to identify potential high-dollar donors? You've alluded to it several times, Roy, and we will have sessions on that, both that we do within the Philanthropy Mastermind series, but also the DonorSearch does independently to talk about its services. So you can look for content like that already in our past catalog under the resources tab at donorsearch.net. You can also reach out to me about scheduling sessions like that. I will do it. My email address is j@donorsearch.net. And this is probably a good time before we ask kind of a final question and conclude. Roy, could you share how people can find out more about you and follow your work?
Sure. It's real easy. It's fitfundraising.com. You can also go to royjones.org. It takes you to the same place. But fitfundraising.com. We really are very, very new firm. We've been around about 24 months now, all in, and we've helped 41 nonprofits with free fundraising counsel, free. And that's been our model for doing business. Out of those 41 nonprofits that we've helped, 12 have put us on retainer. And we've got a staff of 9, so we're a small agency, but we primarily focus on middle donor, major donor cultivation, and how to procure those kind of donors and how to upgrade and cultivate.
And that information has been put into the chat, and along with a very nice comment here about your work. So I'll just leave that for all of you to take a look at. I also want to just give a shout out for a session we're having next Tuesday, because all of this was to kind of get ready for the giving season, which I know we're thinking about like crazy. And I appreciate the fact that so many of you have been here today live when you're in the midst of it to find what are the best and maybe even the better than best practices as we get into the season. We also have a conversation next week on Tuesday. And of course, here in the United States, Thursday is Thanksgiving, which is why so much of this is timely. But on Tuesday, we have a conversation that's exceptionally rare, and it's with Amy Freitag, who's the president of the New York Community Trust. So one thing we haven't discussed today, but which is important to us, is to figure out what is the role of our community foundations and our trusts in all the work we do, because a lot of donors work through them with their donor advised funds, which Roy talked about earlier. So that information would be all the conversation of Rare One with a leader in the sector. That's on Tuesday at 1 p.m. I really encourage you to come join us for that. We'll learn quite a bit about the role of community foundations and through them, the donors in our communities and the donor advised funds they utilize. And in answer to Daniel's question, you'll see in the chat contact information for Roy right there and also at Fit Fundraising, which you can just Google and you'll find him. So Roy, just summarizing all this, you've given us a lot to work with, but the one thing we have not touched on is the fact that this whole conversation emanated from a blog that you wrote. So can you just mention what that is, and then we'll make sure to include a link to that in the chat as well, because I think that's fun. And it's also something that maybe could be a conversation starter in our offices when people feel overwhelmed, but you need them to do the things you've been sharing with us. I think this gives them a little bit of hope to think that they can actually have some fun during the fundraising as well as the giving season? What is that piece, and where
Absolutely,
can
because
people find it?
it just really is. In this column, and you'll see it. We'll be posting it. I write a column for a network of homeless shelters. I've been doing it for about 3 years, so called the Citygate Network. And the title of this column was Sugar Plum Visions. And I'm kind of going after those people that take off during the holidays, that are supposed to be working in the fundraising and development sector. And that really was the catalyst for the conversation. And it really, you have to decide, we're going to work during the holidays, and you got to make that decision. You got to understand that's what we do. I mean, this is about ministry. We care for the donors we serve, and the time that most of them are making gifts is between Thanksgiving and year end.
And where
And
can
so,
people find that again, Roy?
um,
Oh, is that it?
yeah, you'll be able to find it at fitfundraising.com and Citygate Network. So,
Got it right there
so
in the chat. Thank you for
there you
that, Joe.
go. And so,
And maybe
so you'll
just on a
see more
personal,
about that.
yes, thank you so much, Roy. And just on a personal note, this is obviously a season when we're not only thinking about fundraising and giving, but we're also thinking about food and sharing. And to your point, this is a time when we can also remember our local community organizations that are providing shelter and food. So I hope that'll be among the many things you consider this season. Thank you so much, Roy. Really, really love your comments, your suggestions, and encouragement. We all need it. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back to offer more when we get through this big rush of the end of the year.
It is my honor, Jay. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for DonorSearch and all they do. And you guys are such great partners to so many of us. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you out there. We really do appreciate your being here today. Good luck in the weeks ahead. Do keep coming back and joining us. We'll have a lot of great stuff to offer you. And please fill out the survey so we will know what you want to see and hear as we get into our 10th season, which comes up, of course, on January 1. Lots of things to share with you. Not today, but soon. Fill out the survey and we'll tell you all about it. See you all later next time. Thanks, Roy.